Welcome everybody to the Interagency briefing for community engagement and public relations. And you have been forthwith meeting Delceno Miles. She's the CEO of the Miles Agency. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, we appreciate you very much. And we want to welcome everybody this year. We got a ton of folks from the VA and we got all over the place. Folks coming from all over the place, equal opportunity. FAA, NASA, I saw some folks from NASA, NIH. There's a lot of interest in communication these days, and we want to welcome everybody that is here. And a quick disclaimer that this event is not affiliated or endorsed by any agency and is provided to you, the audience, for informational purposes only. And any participation in this briefing is voluntary, and engagement by government personnel is not an indication of endorsement or commitment to purchase from any vendor, including you, Delceno Miles. However, we do that because that's what GSA has given us to do so that they can communicate with us and make it easy. In fact, we've already got some communication. This will be the best briefing ever. Philip says, if I learn something, so the bar is just set so high for us. Just learn anything, Philip, just anything. Christian, gather additional skills on how to engage more and effectively communicate with the public. I do believe that you know a little bit about that, Ms. Miles, don't you?
Absolutely.
And with the FAA, I learned how to communicate better. Wonderful. I think that that's a universal human trait. And Stacy, understand the research used to form PR communications campaigns. Great question on that. And we do have some preliminary questions, and we will be referring back to this in a little bit. Lynn said, effective communication with groups of varying backgrounds and education levels. Very important, wouldn't you say, Delceno?
Absolutely. That's right.
And Carol, how to effectively communicate with hostile or irate people. Never with the VA do we have any hostile or irate people. There's no way. And then Derek from HHS, outreach adjustments during the pandemic. What are you talking about, Derek? What's going on? I never heard of it. No pandemic. I'm just kidding. Kathleen, the importance of using plain language. How about that, Delceno? Just telling people what just straight verbiage, right?
Keep it simple.
Government never has any problem with plain language, just saying. And then Matthew from the Selective Service, how to really measure social media results. Oh, you're absolutely right. We'll be talking a lot about that. We'll give you some introductions on who Delceno Miles is and some briefing controls. Very simple now using Zoom. What is the community engagement and public relations? And then talking about what is your plan? How do you get your messaging out there? We'll get to your questions and hopefully get you some answers, as well as some procurement options and additional resources for later. Participation is easy. You can chat throughout the process. You can raise your hand so we can engage with you. Love that, by the way. And any Q&A you can pop in there, and I'll be doing my best to be assembling that so that we can engage with you. You can, if you have something that you'd rather take offline, you can send it to govsupport@themilesagency.com, and Delceno will see that, and we don't have to publicize that here, right, Delceno?
That's right.
And I've been working on this. This is a Zoom issue at the moment. I cannot supply you with the handouts, and I know there's people that are asking for the handouts, so we will get that to you after the presentation in a follow-up. But I wanted to make note of that you will be getting the presentation, sample materials, as well as the capability statement from the Miles Agency. And we will be asking a few questions about why, first starting with, why did you guys decide to show up today? Is it because you want to connect with community engagement PR experts like Delceno? You work with projects, or you procure projects, or you have a specific requirement, or your boss made you come? Somebody's got to answer that. Somebody had to be under somebody.
That's right.
To answer that. So very good. We'll leave that open for a little bit. And while we're doing that, you're down in Virginia Beach.
That's right.
And are you close to the water down there, or what? How do you?
Not just a few minutes away from the ocean front. Tough duty here. Yeah, we've been in business now.
Somebody's got to live in those kinds of places.
That's tough duty. Yeah,
so. That's right. All right, with that, we're going to give you another 5, 4, 3, 2. You can do it. It is easy and painless to do that. 2, 1, and boom. And we'll share those results. connecting with people, with PR experts. I do believe we have an expert here. So, we working on those from a project management standpoint, and then we have some from procurement, and some have a specific need. So we do appreciate that very much. And somebody's boss made them. I knew somebody had to have their boss that was telling them to get here. All right, let's talk about the Miles Agency. The Miles Agency, like the Ohio State University, right?
Sure. Yes, that's right.
Virginia Beach and that tough life down in Virginia Beach. You started this in 1989. How did you get started? Why are you doing what you do? And tell us about your how you got to be such a communication specialist.
Sure. As you see, we've been in business now for 31 years. We had a big bash, pre-pandemic, of course, for our 30th, where we never heard of the coronavirus at that time. But yeah, we've been in business now. We're headquartered here, native here. So I'm a beach girl. So I don't like to be landlocked. But procurement or public relations and community engagement, that's in my DNA. I had a partner back when we first started. I bought him out in 95 and rebranded to the Miles Agency. And the vast majority of my clients are from the public sector. So they tend to hire me to help them develop their communications plans, help them implement those plans using various tools. And of course, that depends on the audience. And we can get into that a little bit later too. But this isn't work for me. This is what I did. This is just, to me, fun. Because being a people person and being an extrovert, and by the way, pandemic is terrible on extroverts because you can't really, this thing with this Brady Bunch thing and the boxes on the screen, is not enjoyable. I like being around people, human beings. So this pandemic has been torture. And granted, I respect those who have to stay quarantined and all of that. Absolutely. But certainly we make those adjustments. But yeah, I just enjoy the communications process and getting to know someone else's opinion and how that opinion can shape a project. And so that's really why clients hire us more often than not, is to develop message points to assist them with applying those message points on various platforms. And now there's so many platforms that we can use, but it depends on the audience, whether it's old, young, male, female, active, quarantine, pivoting from the traditional platforms to something to accommodate those in the pandemic, like we're doing now. Yep. So we've made those adjustments for our clients, and so we're still having fun doing it. And so the process of communicating, developing the message points, developing that strategy, and everything we do is research driven. And so we don't just go out there willy-nilly. We do the research, we do our homework, identifying who the stakeholder groups are, what's the best way, most effective way to reach them and communicate with them, and for them to communicate with us. So it's not a one way, it's a conversation. So that's what's important, and not just pushing information out. So that's the other part of the community engagement. I like making that distinction. Public relations is sort of you pushing information out and all of that, but the engagement is where you're encouraging and inviting the public to, or whoever the stakeholder is, to communicate with you and for you to respond accordingly. So that's why I make that distinction. And
we're going to be talking about that exactly, because guess what? That's a great setup for what we're talking about. So what is, you already mentioned the difference between public involvement and engagement, that kind of thing. And you're going to talk about internal communications, external, all those types of things. So give us an overview of kind of the different avenues that we can take in engaging with whoever we need to communicate with.
Well, I know we have multiple agencies online right now. So there's a need sometimes for the internal in terms of talking to your colleagues, your peers that you work with, or your supervisors, your director, department heads, the secretary of your agency. So it's that piece to make sure everybody's on the same page. The external, that's literally everyone outside that department or outside that agency. So whether that's the public, whether that's an elected official, a member of Congress needs to get information about something because they want that as background for a bill that they're carrying, or it could be certainly the media, or it could be your constituents that you're serving, whether that is veterans or whether that are environmental activists or what have you, engineers. So we have to make sure we understand who the audience is, so we can develop the right message, and then manage that last bullet there about managing expectations. I always joke with my clients to say that, the public can come back with a project and ideas that's at a Tesla budget, but you may have a Chevy budget. So we got to manage that to make sure we steer them more towards Chevy than the Tesla. So that's important. That's a big part of developing your message. And then the stakeholder management, identifying the various influencers, whether that is leaders in the community, elected officials, thought leaders, those kinds of individuals, and then that helps determine what platform we use. So sometimes it's boots on the ground, or, for not to be sexist, sometimes it's stilettos in the street. So I like to make sure that we're balanced there. So that's part of that stakeholder management. And we have a system where we manage that for the clients, or we at least get the database going for them, and then turn that over, and the clients can manage it. So these are just among some of the questions that we ask our clients as we develop their plan.
And so we know we can take a look at this. What is your biggest challenge for there's a lot of pieces here we're going to talk about. We have an overall strategy with community. What is your biggest communication challenge? Overall strategy, identifying the audience, identifying the medium, the messaging, and I do believe all those are kind of tied together. Yeah. And then measuring success, which is completing that loop. And you mentioned it. There's a couple things you mentioned I thought they're spot on, and that deals with your audience, and then figuring out what the best path to the audience is, using research, doing the research, then the best path to the audience, and what is the message to the audience, and then completing that circle. It all revolves around, we can put budget there too, as far as things, but you can have my mom would say, you have champagne taste on a beer budget.
There's that.
That's what my mom would say. So with that, we're going to give you another 5, 4, 3, 2. You can do one, and boom. And look at this. This is pretty good. A lot of folks trying to make sure that they can measure their success, so that they're effective. Imagine that. People wanting to be effective. That's crazy talk. Crazy talk, Delceno. So let's talk about what the plan looks like. You're looking at how this gets started. So take us right through this.
Well, I'll give you a case study that I'm working on right now. We're on the team that's working with VDOT, the Virginia Department of Transportation, and they are putting it. It's a $3.8 billion project where they're constructing and will be installing 2 new tunnels that goes and that particular, I-64 right now services 100,000 cars a day, or vehicles a day. And so it's a lot of congestion there. So the answer is to widen it, as well as to have the 2 new tunnels to alleviate some of that. So we developed a communications plan for them, starting with the objectives: alleviate traffic, emergency exits. There were several objectives that they had. Who is the audience? Not just the drivers, but it's also the military was our audience, because that is a lane that our Navy, this is a big military area here, for those who are not familiar with this part of the country. We have all the armed services here: Navy, Army, Marines, Coast Guard, everyone, and Air Force. And so our audience was the military, particularly the Navy, because we have to make sure that during that construction that we don't have anything that impedes their mission. So we have to have open communication with the military. And the port is a huge port here. That's another audience. So the bottom line is identify boaters, maritime industry, all of those, longshoremen. Those were among our audiences. Of course, the media. And then in that plan, we identified the best way to reach particular audiences. The Navy, the best way to reach them, really, they like to have face-to-face or virtual meetings where all the players are around the table. With our traveling, with the tourism industry, hotels, and this is a big tourist area. We worked with the hospitality community, and they have their own platforms. So we gave them content that they can disseminate to their audiences. With the media, certainly we have a project website, we have a project Facebook page, and other social media platforms that we use for the general public, but for specific targeted audiences. We have a newsletter that we put out monthly that give updates on the project. We have a project website. We have a project email that they can go and get their questions answered readily. And what we want to say is really back to what the objectives are. What does this project, this $3.8 billion project mean? What's the benefits of it? What are we trying to accomplish? What are the outcomes? And so the project is due to be finished in 2025. That may not, that's a short period of time. It's a very aggressive timeline for this size project, but when people are in traffic, like what's going on when you're going to finish this road, we got to make sure that we have timely information on what's going on, if a lane's going to be closed or any of those kinds of impediments. And we measure success by not only media hits and hits in the social media, but also those who post comments or the number of folks that we have following us. That's something that the client has asked for. They want more followers on Twitter and Facebook and all of that. And so we're doing that. We're having outreach presentations to various community groups, whether that is civic leagues or engineering organizations. So those are all things that we've baked into this particular communications plan. And we're continuing to monitor and update that plan.
And that's I think it's so important, is being able to complete the loop back around so that. And that's a great measurement of success. You got your followers and things like that, but really getting to a place where you're listening to what's happening. And you mentioned a couple of things earlier, and you have your internal communications, and that is very specific to the agency and the requirements of the agency. But it can start real high, or it can start at the bottom. There's multiple ways to approach this. So take us through this for the internal message.
Well, again, the internal is depends on who we're talking about. Is it just people in your particular department or division? Is it higher up, all the way up to the department head or the secretary of the agency? Is it the Secretary of Defense, Joint Chiefs of Staffs? Who is it? So let's determine who we want to talk to first. That will help us narrow our focus on the internal piece. And then the message points. What are we trying to convey? Whether that is, let's talk about the pandemic for a second. The vaccine, and out there, a lot of information flying about the access to this vaccine. Who gets it? Who's first in line? How is it going to be disseminated? Are we communicating with the governors and the state agencies that are relevant? And how is that information being disseminated even further down to the localities to make sure that everybody is up to speed, has awareness of those message points, and is getting real-time, accurate information. So our governor has a press conference every Tuesday and Wednesday, giving updates on COVID. And he's also quoting information that he's getting from the CDC. So obviously, folks at CDC have to have their internal communications on point before they disseminate that to the states, and then the governor in turn disseminates that to his localities or her localities in their respective states.
Absolutely. Very, very important. And that's all internal. And then you start talking about your external message, and you can see this really works right here with the bullhorn.
Don't have to use that too often now. And that's when it gets to folks like you and me, Dave. So everyone internally has the message. Now it's time to share it, and when it's appropriate, share it with the public, and making sure that they have ways to access that information, whether that's a website, whether that is a Facebook page or what have you. If they have questions and concerns, making sure that the healthcare providers, whether that's hospitals or other healthcare systems, have the accurate information so they too can talk to their patients, their doctors, and others affiliated with them, and the caregivers as well. And so I have here tailoring that message. And one of the questions was about making sure that it's simple. Where everybody knows the COVID-19, let's not get technical about what it is and all that. We know that they can make people sick. It can cause death. And here's some ways to stay safe. And so you tailor the message for the media, you tailor it for, well, in this case, we say elected officials, but any sort of public official and the general public. So we can tailor that message. Most people just want the bottom line, and you give them the bottom line.
And I think that was what was earlier from Kathleen from National Park Service, was talking about the importance of using plain language, because it's easier to understand, it's easier for people to know, and it's easy for people to understand what the page is. Now it can be different mediums. I think that was one of the pieces about effective communications that came from Lynn. Effective communication with groups of varying backgrounds and education levels. All that gets wrapped in, if you're talking about the public at large, it is all that, right? It's all of those.
It's all that, but this is where research comes in. So if they're, for instance, with the COVID piece, let's make sure that those in senior homes, senior care homes, they get that information and make sure it's at the level that they can understand. And that's not just the content, but it could be, you may need bigger print. You may need to have access for those who may be hard of hearing. Yeah, us baby boomers. I
tell you what, 55 is a son of a gun when it comes to singing.
That's right. And it's not one size fits all. One thing I caution clients is that when you say that you're going to target a particular group, make sure you're sensitive to that. For instance, even in the Latino community, Hispanic community, it's not one size fits all.
That's true.
Folks from Mexico, different message points, perhaps from someone that's from Europe or from South America or even from Puerto Rico. So we can't just treat everybody with the same brush. That's where the research comes in.
So true. Very, very important. That also leads you to the place where you're heading to, and then being able to complete that loop. And this you mentioned this a lot, and that is how important it is to incorporate what they're saying back to management. And that'll tell you whether or not you were tone deaf or something like that on your messaging, but getting that input from external stakeholders, which is really, if you're talking, that's why we're here, community engagement and public relations. And I think, to your point, one of it is kind of a press with your public, you're pushing things out with your PR, but getting that dialogue back and forth to help with what you're trying to do with them and for them and for each other, right?
Right. I noticed we had someone from Park Service. I'm working with them now at Fort Monroe National Monument. With former Army base in this region. And so we love hearing from the public about what sort of programming they like to see on this at Fort Monroe. And so we've gotten great feedback, everything from music concerts to more history. There's a wonderful history there. And also what's once called the Freedom's Fortress, because many former slaves went there for asylum. They were considered contraband at the time, so they weren't forced to go back into their slaveholders. And so there's so much rich history there, not just military history, but just racial history, African-American and Native American history there. So by hearing from the public things that they care about and they're concerned about, that helps the National Park Service and the Fort Monroe Authority to shape the programming that they offer to the public. And again, that goes back to the various message points and getting the research and using the various platforms to engage the public and invite them to come and visit Fort Monroe.
Absolutely. And great. I love the National Park Service, by the way. We get the card every year and go someplace and love what the Park Service does. So let's talk about stakeholder management, because then it's you want to manage your message, but you also have to, I hate to say it, but kind of like herding cats, wouldn't you say?
Well, that's part of that outreach piece, because we use mechanisms where people sign up, they have to register for events and things like that, be they virtual or in person, and we build that database. And so we use that database to disseminate information, whether that's a newsletter or invitation to a meeting or other special events. And also perhaps sometimes we will contact them to help us they'll be sort of like a mini focus group, if you will, to give us some feedback on something that we may be planning, a program that we're planning or event that we're planning, to get that feedback from these various stakeholders. And that segmentation is, and we use these platforms to reach some of those individuals. We've used online surveys, that's part of the research, to get to just gauge what they're interested in, to help us shape the programming or events or what have you, depending on what the client needs, or just make sure that there's attendance at particular events that the client is having. And it's also a way to stay connected. I'm a big believer, you have to cultivate relationships with your stakeholders. One of the questions was about different messaging and people from different backgrounds and things like that. And so we want to make sure that what is in our message reflects the concerns of the community that we're communicating with. So whether that people are interested in history, interested in engineering, interested in an environment, those kinds of things, military or health. So we segment the message based on the stakeholder group that we're reaching to. It's not just sort of a email blast to everybody with the same message. We want to make sure that we tailor it for that particular audience.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is that a lot of these platforms have that loop built right back in, because if all of a sudden they're screaming at you,
yeah, then
and so
yeah.
I know the VA is the only place apparently that Carol was saying, Carol with a K, by the way, from the VA, was saying how to effectively communicate with hostile or irate people. Fortunately, nobody else has to deal with hostile or irate people, right?
Well, that's crisis communication to some degree.
Absolutely.
What I find sometimes is that people want to be listened to. If they feel, that's what I call like ego management, where people just want to feel like they've been asked, that we care about their opinion and what they have to say, even when they're angry. Sometimes if we find, more often than not, we'll find individuals, those influencers that have a strong reputation with a particular group that could be angry or get angry, and deputize them, if you will, to assist us with delivering the message. Great
term, deputizing. to be that kind of gives that's an empowerment, right? So you empower them.
That's right.
And a lot of times people just need permission for the dialogue, because they don't know, sometimes they just think, well, all you want to do is keep telling me. But if you give permission, say, hey, we really do want to know what you have to say, and be able to incorporate that. And speaking of knowing what you want to say, what that's one of the things that we would like to know is when do you expect a communications and public community engagement and public relations project? We already have at least 10 of the folks, more than that, actually, I think it's 14 of the folks already told us that some of them have an immediate need and some of them are in Q2. Q2 is not far in fiscal year 2021.
Right.
So yeah, let us know when you're having those, because we can provide some additional information. And obviously we can't answer all the questions right here. And that's why we wanted to start the dialogue and start the connecting, so that you can help and we can help each other with the dialogue. And we do have somebody, let's see real quick. Somebody had their hand raised, I think. Hold on one second. Let me see. Jeffrey Rodriguez, I see you have your hand raised. Is that on purpose? And I see I'm asking you to unmute. Jeffrey, that could be a click there. We have a couple of other questions that we have already. So Jeffrey, if you pop up and unmute yourself, then we can chat or talk like that. We'll give you another 5, 4 on the poll. 4, 3, 2, 1, and boom. So let's take a look and see what's happening. A lot of folks not sure. That's okay, right, Delceno?
Sure.
That's okay.
Sure.
And for the folks that do have a requirement, we'll make sure that we reach out, and if there's anything we can do to help connect the dots for you, we will do that. So Jeffrey, I'm going to assume that hand raised is
he's still
is something else. All right. So questions. We do have a couple of questions here. Hold on one second. I will get those for you.
All right.
And the one was for Matthew from the selective service. How do you really measure social media? And he says, impressions are like walking down a New York street in rush hour. I pass by people, but I'm not seen. great differentiation between true dialogue and impressions. And I'm not a big fan of impressions either, but let's talk about that.
Sure. That's where we have we've used platforms like podcasts where we actually engage people. That's that difference between that public relations. I go back to that distinction, public pushing information out to say that, okay, we had 5,000 people who clicked on they like us. That's, to me, that's not engagement. Engagement is where you're cultivating those relationships, and that's where we having those influencers. So the true measure of social media, are you engaging with them? Is it more than just, as you said, are you saying hello as you walk down that New York street? Did you recognize an old college classmate? So you reach out to individuals. It's really one-on-one marketing is what we're doing. It's not marketing to the masses. That's old school. You're really marketing one-on-one. You're talking to me. I'm talking to Dave. That's why when you go to Amazon.com, you make a purchase. Why do you think it pops up saying, oh, other people bought this product, that bought that book. They also bought this book. That's one-on-one marketing. They're not saying, Dave, everybody and their grandfather buys books. They're saying, Dave, you like this book about Harry Potter. Well, those who bought Harry Potter also bought this. That's one-on-one marketing. That's cultivating a relationship. And then my college, for instance, they'll send me something specific to me if they want me to support a particular organization that they know I already, or a particular school, whether it's School of Fine Arts or something else. But it's to me. It's not just dear alumni. It's dear Delceno, dear Dave. So that's how you measure, is the engagement. The back and forth. That's the piece that we really focus on, not so much as pushing a lot of stuff out there, but really have you engaged. And that means you can do some interactive things on your platforms where you may, like Dave is doing in this, taking the polls, getting people to fill out a survey to help develop some message points or some programming that you're thinking about. That's true engagement, where you're asking for my opinion, where you're stopping to see me, to do you really see me, or you just say that, oh, I have 15,000 friends. Do you really?
Do you really? And all of those are my closest friends, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, and here's one from Stacy. And I think if I look back, Stacy's also with the VA. How do you obtain leadership support for using a variety of tools and tactics when all they want is social? I'm thinking, 2x4. Does 2x4 work with your leadership? Smack them over the head? I don't know. You tell me.
Ask the question again. What's the question again?
It is, how do you obtain leadership support for using a variety of tools when all they want is social? Great. That's a great question, Stacy.
Yeah.
And it deals with, I mean, you could talk about some research to say, hey, if all you want is social, you're going to reach this group or this. It depends on your audience, right? I mean, if
that's where the research comes in, Dave. That's where you can show the leadership. What does the data say? The data says we're going to reach this many people if we only use Twitter and Facebook, and we're trying to. And if we want to reach seniors of a certain age, particularly older veterans, are we really going to reach them on Twitter? So let the data speak for itself. That's where that research comes in very handy here, where you can have at the ready the data that shows, that supports your recommendation that we broaden our toolkit, that we have more than just social media, if you will, that we need multiple tools so we can make sure that we can broaden our message, whether that maybe using traditional advertising, whether that's television, whether that's radio, what have you, or whether that my mom still reads the newspaper. So that's how you're going to reach her, that and Judge Judy. So if you have an ad on Judge Judy, you're going to reach my mom. So Judge Judy in the paper is how you're going to reach her. So she's not on Twitter, she's not on Facebook, and none of that other stuff. So if you have the data, the research-driven data that says this is how the percentage of the folks who are going to reach using these platforms, have that at the ready, and it's going to be hard to argue against the data. And then, of course, it's all budget sensitive too. Mm-hmm. So certainly, social media is budget friendly, but at the same time, just saying that you're out there and you're not. That goes back to that other question where you're just walking down the street and not engaging anyone. I don't know if that has much value either, until that goes back to having true measures of success. That closes that loop
complete
back.
that loop.
So just I'm not a believer in just checking a box to say that we did something on Twitter or we posted an ad on Facebook. I'm not a believer in that. It needs to be strategic. That's where having that strategic communication plans comes in handy, because you have all that baked in there.
And here, this is from Martha, who just chimed in here, and she's with Bureau of Land Management.
Okay.
As it relates to engaging, I believe it begins in our office. Do you have the support of management or staff members? Are we engaging them? Great. That's exactly right. Engagement.
Well, that's that internal stakeholder question I mentioned earlier. That's your internal stakeholders, your internal communications. You have to start with them. That's where it begins. You have to have your team on board so you can implement it as you sort of go outside that circle. So you have your internal folks, and then as you get further out, you have to make sure everybody's on point and everybody's saying the same thing, or at least have the same message points.
And engagement is that two-way street, right? It's one thing to be just voicing your opinion. There's plenty of people that want to just blow their opinion out there. But engaging is the hard work. It's the, hey, am I really listening? Because engagement, I think you nailed it, Delceno, is engagement is the listening part.
It's listening, and I'm asking for your opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you to tell me what you think, and you have to be prepared for someone to disagree with your approach, and that's okay. So you may need to go back and modify whatever the message point is, because you've asked someone their opinion. Be ready to hear that opinion. Be ready to receive it respectfully.
That's right. And receive it, and sometimes in the irate ones, right? And I've always had a policy of, hey, give me your feedback, and you can yell at me, and I'll do my best to not take it personally and look for the kernels of truth that are in there. It's a lot harder when people are yelling at each other, right? And if two sides are yelling at each other, nothing's going to get done.
No, that's
I don't know. There may be an example out there politically. I'm going to stay away from that. All right, so we'll get on to we'll get into that. That's great insight, Martha. Thank you so much for that insight. It's very good. And Jeffrey, I still got you unmuted. You have the ability to unmute. I see that your hand is raised. If there's any other Q&A, shoot it to govsupport@themilesagency.com, and we'll make sure that gets answered. If folks would like to engage you and learn more about you, very easy to do, because you have a presence in the federal government already. You're already doing work with the federal government and supporting agencies in multiple ways. And you can reach out to Delceno. You are a woman-owned, minority-owned business, right?
Last time I checked.
Last time you checked.
Yep. Still that's got right. Plenty of estrogen here. Yep, that's right.
That's right. There's a whole lot about that I'm leaving alone. And we will, and staying on point, we will get you, so everybody has what you need. We will get you a recap email that's coming out. That is the mode of communication. Believe it or not, email is still the best way to reach most of the people in the government. And the other way is LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So those are the two ways that the government prefers to go about things. But you will get a copy of the briefing presentation, the sample materials, Miles' capabilities, as well as some of the dialogue that we have here, and a link to the video so you can watch this over and over again, just because of its entertainment value. So with that, we just want to say thank you for joining us. If there's anything additional you would like to have directly from Delceno, Miles, and the Miles Agency, you can reach out to Delceno right there. Gov Support, you can reach out to us if there's anything that we can do for you as well. But we just want to thank you for being here, Delceno, and wish everybody the happiest and merriest of seasons, right?
That's right. Everyone have a great, safe and happy and blessed holiday season. Thank you for the opportunity and your time.
That is a fact. And we do appreciate you being here and the feedback. And we're going to complete this loop and make sure we reach out to you. Thank you so much. And we hope that we came in on time and on budget. There you go.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.